Hey there viewers, welcome back to Supermariodiagnostics. Once again, today we are working on a 2019 Cadillac XT4, and the customer's concern is that the check engine light is on. No other symptoms are felt. I drove it and it drove perfectly. As far as I can tell, no other symptoms are felt other than, or seen, or heard other than the check engine light. Went ahead and did a pre-scan, and we've got a C07-00 intake camshaft profile actuator position sensor 1 circuit low voltage. We're gonna have to do our homework. We're gonna go check out all data, see what the diagrams look like, see if we can find any description and operation, get familiar with the system before we jump the gun. All right, so we've got all data pulled up by VIN number, and I wanna go ahead and type in the code into this. It was a P2C07. Let's go ahead and write that in there and see what we come up with. P2Z07 intake camshaft profile actuator position sensor 1 circuit low voltage. Right off the bat we can see this is a 3-wire sensor because it shows a 5-volt reference, a signal, and a low reference. We can see our code right here, P2C07. The description of our signal is the control module input circuit has an internal resistance connected to 5 volts. So I would imagine it's a pulse width modulated signal between 0 to 5 volts. I could be wrong about that. And it shows a Hall effect sensor. So it is a 3-wire, and it is used to measure the following application: M129 intake camshaft profile actuator. So it's not a camshaft variable valve timing or any of that stuff. It's variable valve lift, because camshaft profile actuator, that would have been completely different if this was a camshaft sensor issue. So I like to, oh, there it is right there, P2C07, the control module detects wrong feedback signal at the control circuits. I think this thing's getting the signals, the pulse width modulated actuator signal, but the signal of the position sensor itself may be shorted to ground. Let's see if we can find anything on this. Where is it, right? So this is our number 1 actuator. We've got 6 wires onto this connector. I'd like to go do some digging and see exactly which ones are our position sensors. All right, so we got the diagram pulled up, and I can see the intake camshaft profile actuator position sensor number 1. Pins 1, 2, and 3. That's good for us, but it makes it very easy. I see 2 shared circuits already. Our white and red is over here, and our black and green is over here shared as well. I'm positive that our violet and white is going to be our position sensor signal, right? So that is one big old diagram. Violet and white. So camshaft intake lobe axial position sensor signal. So violet and white is our signal sensor, our signal circuit. Let's go over there and disconnect it and see if our code changes, and then we're going to check for 5-volt reference as well. We're going to make sure that our 1 and 2 pins 1 and 2 end up in 5 volts. So here's our actuator. We got a 6-pin actuator, and I don't see any white and red here, but I do see it down here. So maybe I didn't see that correctly, but I didn't see the actual position sensor. I might have missed that, but we've got our pins 1, 2, and 3. We should have 5 volts at our white and red against our black and green. Just gonna hook up my multimeter. We're back probing this, and we got a nice solid 5-volt reference, so we can rule that out as an issue. And I believe my middle wire, my black, should be, you know, we're not negative here. My wires are correct, so I believe that my middle wire is going to be my ground. So I'm going to grab my positive lead and go to our signal circuit, and we see 0.047. So that is the short to ground. Let's go ahead and disconnect it carefully and see if it jumps back up to anything else. And it jumps up to 5 volts. I just reconnected it, and it didn't go back down to ground. Oh my goodness, that's funny. But the problem was a shorted sensor because we have good power and ground. Let me make sure that our ground is still good. Well, it is, otherwise we wouldn't be seeing this. Our ground is still good, and our signal wire is still at 5. And I'm fully seated. It's like the problem went away. Now I'm pretty sure this code will clear. Let's go ahead and check. Take you guys over there. That's funny because now the problem fixed itself. And I'm almost certain that this will become a history code. Huh, still there. Let's try clear it. No DTC. And the problem is gone. Thank goodness I got it on film. That's funny. So something happens. I mean, I cleared the code and now it's back to shorted. So let me go ahead and disconnect it one more time. Usually when sensors short, it's a dead short. I reconnected it, back at 5 volts. I'm gonna grab the scan tool. We got the scan tool. I'm gonna try clearing it again. We're going to read again. We got the 5 volts. Low voltage, we're gonna clear it. No codes, still at 5 volts. Let me try reading it again, just for the heck of it. No codes. I'm gonna cycle the key. Nothing yet. Let's go ahead and put this back on. Start it up. Probably should have kept the camera on the multimeter. A little bit of a long start there. Doesn't seem to be acting up right now. I guess it doesn't like that. But either way, we got a code, and the short goes away when you disconnect it. That is very weird, right? Because it was dead shorted. Got the key on again. And we got a dead short. Just about a dead short. Interesting. That goes away when you disconnect it, and then when you reconnect it, it doesn't go back as if it was a position. Right? As if the camshaft, as if that sensor was actually reading that position. Disconnected, reconnected. Oh, this time it did. Disconnected, reconnected. So this time it does do it. That's weird. Disconnected. Almost. Check our codes. should have an open circuit. It says low voltage. Let's clear that. No codes because it doesn't know the difference between an open circuit and a short to reference. It should have a code. It should have an open circuit code. Interesting. Can reconnect it. So now it's just behaving differently. Let's see what our neighbor says, right? Because I'm positive that both of these are going to be at the same position. Now we've got our ground almost in. I'm trying to hold the camera and do this too. Sorry. Let me put some light for you guys. Ha. Check out my light. Interesting. Very interesting. On our good sensor, it shows 0.047. So where's the short to ground here? If that side is also reading the same thing. This is absolutely making no sense. No sense to me. Am I gonna have to scope the thing? Should be a pulse width modulated signal. I want to play it safe. Scope both of them at the same time. Because right now I thought it was going to be an internally shorted to ground sensor, and it's not looking that way. Now I'm kind of worried that when it's running, maybe something else is going on. So I had to step away for a bit, but we're back, and these are the codes that are present now. This is our sensor number 1, our suspect sensor, and then this is sensor number 2, and the code just does not come back. Right? I've cycled the key and it doesn't come back. So I'm gonna try running it and see if we see anything in particular. We're gonna read the codes again, and we've got the low voltage. I'm gonna pause that right there and then turn off the vehicle real quick. It's seeing something it doesn't like, and it's got me a little, okay, no, never mind. So both ground levels are exactly identical, but they are opposing phases, I guess you could say. I gotta tell you, I'm not sure what it's seeing that it doesn't like. Is it the phase? But I'm not seeing anything really that is saying circuit low voltage, unless we're seeing the signal here and not at the engine computer, which I'm not 100% sure where it lives just yet. It might be over here. I'm gonna have to dig in and back probe the ECM because, but then if that was the case, why would the code only come back when it runs? Right? That's my thought process on that. Why does the code only come back when it runs? We see this. Is the key on? They're both on the ground now. They're both grounded. Key is not on. Okay. So they're both at 0. They're both at 0. I go to clear codes. No codes. Both are at ground. Before, one of them was at 5, the other one was grounded. Now they're both at ground. Read codes. No codes. Only when it runs. I kind of have to think that the phase, it must be the phase. So in that case, is our actuator the problem? Is it not doing its job, is the question. And unfortunately, since I have lack of known good information on these vehicles, right, because I barely work on them, I may have to do something that I don't always do. But you know what? There's nothing really wrong with it at this point. I'm going to look into the process of swapping these. I'm thinking about swapping these two right here and see if we have any change. I don't want to make a bad call on this and then, you know, everyone loses. So I'm going to swap these and see if it follows to sensor number 2, or if the phasing, if we see anything on the scope as well. I went ahead and swapped over 1 and 3 and check that out. Yep, you just saw a Swaptronics video. All right, we got our new part in. I'm gonna go ahead and mark this bad one, and I'm gonna install this back to 3, and we're gonna install our new one back to number 1, because that's what the code came in with. It's side number 1. We don't want it to be, you know, if there was a warranty issue, we don't want any discrepancies, right? So for documentation purposes with the customer and whatnot, we're gonna transfer everything back the way it was, installing the new one on number 1. And then we're gonna go ahead and see if anything changes scope-wise. So here's our old one. We got our new one over here. We got our number 3 back in its place. I'm gonna put this back together and start it up, check for codes, check this scope capture, and see if there's any difference, anything that we could have done differently. We've got no codes, and our signals are the same. This is one of those moments where you kind of have to wonder, what were they thinking, right? What was I thinking too, right? Because look, this is the sensor we were looking at. Intake camshaft profile actuator position sensor. It is a complete circuit, right? Intake camshaft profile actuator position sensor 1. But what I did not end up doing until right now, because I saw no difference in the signals, is I found the actuator itself. Intake camshaft profile actuator 1. And there's our sensor. Yep, there's our sensor. Go figure. So yeah, a little bit of more specificity on GM's part would be great, because that is that could send anyone for a loop. They would have replaced that sensor or whatnot, you know. So learn from my mistake. Look at the entire diagram, because who knows whether you might just find 2 things that are named almost, I'm pretty sure it's the same. Intake camshaft profile actuator position sensor. Intake camshaft profile actuator position sensor. I don't even know if I want to post this video, because it's like, you know, it's one of those where it's like, oh well, you should have done this, you should have done that, but where's the fun in that, right? You look at the code, and the code tells you, we've been through all this in the beginning. Actuator position sensor, right? It shows the components. That was I guess that's where I made that mistake, right? So intake camshaft, we see 4 of them. When you look at the diagram, you don't see 4 different units, you see just 2. They're named the same thing, but here specifies that there's 4 units. That kind of should have stood out to me, but it didn't at the time. Hindsight is 2020, you know what I'm saying? There's only 2 intakes camshaft profile actuator position sensors here, 2 exhaust, and when we go over here, way down in this big old diagram, we see 4 actual actuators up top. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it as is. I'm gonna let you guys handle that however you see fit. You can let me have it in the comment sections. I know it's coming, so it's perfectly fine with me. I'm gonna leave it as is. Appreciate you guys for taking the time to fumble with me on this one, but we got it fixed. You know, we didn't replace anything that didn't need to be replaced. The data didn't make sense, and there's obvious reasons why now. There's service information discrepancies on GM's part. I'm pretty sure if we go to the OE diagrams, let's see if it shows the same thing. Engine control schematic. We're gonna have to go one by one. Intake, camshaft intake, profile actuators versus position sensors. We see some stuff here. intake camshaft profile actuator position sensor 1. And then if we go back to the other one, the actual actuators, intake camshaft profile actuator 1, which is, this is the one that's setting the code, not the other one. So you can understand the confusion there. But yeah, GM literally named it that, and that's how it showed up on the interactive diagram as well. So GM needs to somehow differentiate how they throw a code versus the component that it's throwing a code for. I don't think they're watching this video, so it's not I'm not getting my hopes up. If you can take anything away from this video, it would be 100% check the entire diagram, double check your work, and if the test doesn't make sense, it's probably for a very good reason. You missed something, right? Take it from me. This is a first-hand example where you can get caught in the weeds if you're not entirely up to snuff on exactly what they meant by what code and whatnot. So I wonder what code it would throw for the sensor itself. Let's put this to rest, right? Let's see what happens here. At the very least, so that this doesn't happen again. Obviously, this would have been completely avoided if the faulty actuator was like 3 or 4, because then it's obvious. All right, well, we only see 2 profile actuator sensors. So, right, if this failure was not 1 or 2, we wouldn't know the difference, right? If it was 3 and 4, this would have been easy. We would have said, where's number 3 and 4 in the diagram? Keep looking at the diagram, and bam. Right, I'm not making excuses, but that's a real life situation that we're seeing. So I want to see what code it sets when we disconnect this one, those stupid little red tabs. There we go. Let me disconnect it completely. This is for science at this point. All right? You gotta be kidding me. I'm gonna make sure the key is on. Key is on. It's not throwing a code. That is wild. You gotta be kidding me. Let me put this back together. Make sure here. No codes. Unbelievable. All right, no codes. Let's see how long you can go without codes if you're running. Check engine light did turn on. Sleeve position sensor 1. Sleeve position sensor 1. Now, where is that in the schematics? Oh, you know what? Let's type in that code, right? P30BE. Let's see what it actually says. Sleeve cam lobe position sensor. Cam lobe position sensor. Interesting. That's good to know. Very good to know. Big difference. That's the sleeve position sensor. Even though the diagram doesn't say a thing about sleeves, right? Because if we go to the code, that's one thing, but if we go to the diagrams, profile. Here they just call it actuator. Profile actuator. It doesn't say anything about sleeve. It says profile. And if we go to the other one, it also says profile. So, thanks GM. Thank you all for taking the time to watch this one. don't fall into that trap where if you get a number 1 or number 2 profile actuator position sensor codes, you end up testing the sleeve one, because there's no such thing as a sleeve anywhere to be found in the wiring diagrams from GM. So that's one for the books. Thank you all for taking the time to watch. I'll catch you on the next one. This one's fixed. Another happy customer. Sure, the testing didn't make sense. The diagram wasn't read completely. You know, learn from my mistakes. This is a first-hand an example of where, you know, incomplete reading of a diagram and a bit of an inconsistency between the codes and the OE information can kind of make the tests not make sense. If we would have had a number 3 or 4 actuator, those top actuator faults, we would have seen that, oh, well, 3 and 4 is not in the diagram. Where is 3 and 4? So then you would look into the whole diagram and see 3 or 4. But since we had number 1 and the diagram show position sensors, profile position sensors for both of those components, whether it's the sleeve or the actuator, you might see some weird stuff in your testing, like we did in our testing. We saw everything was pretty much good, but then we swapped the actuators, and then that followed. That's where it became abundantly clear that we had an actuator issue, not a sleeve issue. If that makes sense, I hope it makes sense to all of you, the little issue that we ran into there. If not, leave it in the comments section. Let me have it. I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for taking the time to watch. You have a good one.